We have everybody? There you go. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Del Bene. I'm chair of the New Democrat Coalition, and I'm honored to be here with my fellow New Dems, Representatives Scott Peters, Ami Bera, Derek Kilmer, Haley Stevens, and Kim Schreier. As the House gets ready to pass the America Competes Act, we're here to call on our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to come together and reach a strong bipartisan agreement on the final bill as soon as possible, both in the House and in the Senate. Under the leadership of President Biden and our Democratic majorities in Congress, our economy is roaring and the recovery has been strong. Unemployment has reached a record low, millions of jobs have been created, wages have increased, and child poverty has decreased. But despite this historic progress, real economic challenges still remain. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, supply chain disruptions, and decades of underinvestment in U.S. infrastructure and manufacturing have resulted in higher prices for Americans at the grocery store and the gas pump. The Biden administration and Congress have acted to ease inflation by clearing bottlenecks at ports, working to lower the price of gas, and enacting bipartisan infrastructure law that is making a difference already across the country, but there's more to be done. That's why New Dems have been leading the push since last year to finalize and pass a robust American competitiveness bill that tackles the issues that are weighing heaviest on American families and set the U.S. up for long-term economic success. For months, we've been working to craft this legislation and advance solutions that deliver results for Americans. In our view, a strong American competitiveness bill should secure our supply chains for critical goods and technologies like microchips and semiconductors, create jobs and spur innovation across the country, not just on the coasts, increase investments in scientific and engineering research, and strengthen American global leadership. Americans are hardworking, innovative, and hopeful, and the best thing we can do is to get a final bill that reflects these principles and make sure that bill gets across the finish line to show Americans that Democrats deliver and that governance can work. That's why we're here today. New Dems will continue to work to ensure the final bill reflects our priorities and makes it to the president's desk as soon as possible. Our nation faces big challenges, but we aren't intimidated. We're excited about the opportunities ahead and are ready to make a difference, and not only in the lives of the American people, but for future generations to come. So now I'm going to turn it over, speaking of future, to our Future of Work and Capitalism Task Force co-chair, Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Haley.
Well, thank you, Chair Del Bene, who's doing a fabulous job leading the New Dems and ensuring that priorities like what we are talking about and passing today in American Competes are done and delivered alongside the President of the United States for the American people. I'm Congresswoman Haley Stevens, proudly representing Michigan's 11th District, the heart of southeastern Michigan and the home of Oakland County and the largest concentration of automotive supplier jobs in the country. And we today, as we take this vote to pass the American Competes Act, are doing something tremendous in terms of investing in our advanced manufacturing sector, our advanced manufacturing workforce, and our supply chains. In particular, what we are experiencing with chips, semiconductors, and the chip shortage. I want to give you just a brief glimpse of what's going on at home. From the auto dealer I speak with who is afraid of going out of business, going out of work, hours cut, to layoffs, to ongoing disruptions at their plants, and that can be from the big three to the suppliers who are waiting on the materials, navigating potential shutdowns, purchase orders stymied because we don't have access to chips, and in particular that go is a wake-up moment for the country, and it affects every single state, every single district, and it affects the core of our innovation. To give you a brief glimpse, in the United States of America, we invented the chip. We invented the semiconductor industry Just 30 some years ago, we were producing upwards of 40% of the world's chips, and today it's hovering almost at 10%. So if we innovated it, we need to start making it here again. And so you'll see with this vote today, and I want everyone to look at this really closely, because this is Democrats delivering. This is New Democrats delivering for our economy and our innovation future. And we are taking this vote for our supply chain. We're taking this vote for our future. Electric vehicles, autonomous vehicle technology, that's all seething through my region, but we've got to seize this moment and invest in supply chains. And in particular, I'll spend all day talking about automotive, but I've got another colleague up here who has got her finger on the pulse for supply chains, particularly in the medical industry, my colleague, Dr. Kim Schreier, who will be up here next. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Representative Stevens.
Your dear friend.
My friend and colleague. I'm Kim Schreier from Washington's 8th Congressional District, and like many of my colleagues, I've heard from people back home about inflation and supply chain backlogs. It was Ellensburg in my district, hay farmers, that about a year ago brought to my attention that there were problems with our supply chain. They were not being informed when a ship was coming to port. They would be charged unprecedented high fees, both at the port waiting for ships to arrive, but also to have their hay transported overseas. And I've heard from my constituents, and we've all felt, rising prices at the gas pump and at the grocery store. And these two issues are directly related, exporting and importing. That's why this legislation is a no-brainer and deserves a place at the top of our agenda. Last week, I joined 25 of my New Dem colleagues in a letter to call for swift passage of the America Competes Act so we can advance the final bill to the president's desk and deliver results for our communities as soon as possible. And I'm excited to be here today to continue this push ahead of the vote on this important legislation. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us many hard lessons, including that we are far too dependent on other countries like China for critical goods and our national security. This is anything from microchips, as you just heard, to masks, to syringes, to medications. And there must be some domestic manufacturing of these goods, which is why I'm glad that one of my bills, which conducts a feasibility study of our domestic manufacturing capability, is in this bill. We need to know what we can and should manufacture right here in the United States. That's why it is so essential that we pass the America Competes Act. This legislation will shore up our domestic supply chains and make one of the biggest public investments in our history to spur domestic manufacturing, build resiliency, monitor gaps, and ensure we can address shortages before they even happen. We are united on the need to invest and secure our supply chains today so we can be more resilient and responsive to economic disruption now and in the future, and be ready for any threat to our national security. Thank you, and now I will turn it over to my colleague from Washington, Representative Derek Kilmer.
Thanks, Kim. So the America Competes Act is about creating jobs and spurring innovation all across our country. Right now, the investments in jobs in the innovation and technology industry are concentrated in just a few parts of our country. According to Brookings, 90% of the jobs in the innovation sector since the beginning of this century have happened in just 5 metropolitan areas around the country. And that's not because good ideas and skilled workers only reside in those 5 metropolitan areas. We need to invest in the untapped potential of our country and create more economic opportunity for more people in more places. We cannot compete if we leave some of our best players on the bench. We need to get them on the field. And thankfully, the America Competes Act does just that. With today's bill, there's a recognition that America can't be competitive if it leaves communities behind and doesn't spur opportunity in new innovation hubs. I'm excited to announce also that a pilot program based on my New Dem endorsed Recompete Act was included in the America Competes Act. The Rebuilding Economies and Creating Opportunities for More People to Excel, or Recompete for the acronym among us, would provide some flexible and long-term support to empower communities to grow jobs and strengthen their economies and focus on helping communities that have faced some persistent economic distress. The recompete grants that are included in today's bill provide flexible help so communities can meet their local economic development needs and create some good jobs. In some communities, that may be infrastructure. In some communities, that may be workforce development. In some communities, that could be helping entrepreneurs. I come from a small town on the Olympic Peninsula, Washington State, that used to export wood products all over the world. And now there's a sincere concern that their main export is going to be young people. And we cannot let that happen. So listen, creating jobs, creating opportunities in the places that have been left behind will grow our economy and make our country more competitive. And it's a step forward in making sure people can have opportunity no matter what zip code they live in. So I'm proud this bill has now passed the House twice through the Build Back Better Act and now through America Competes. Getting this legislation across the finish line and to the President's desk will lift up so many communities in so many ways, and we can't wait. So with that, let me turn it over to the Coalition's Vice Chair for Policy, Scott Peters.
Thanks, Derek. Good morning, everyone. The New Dems are focused on advancing legislation that helps America succeed, as you've already heard, and keeping the United States competitive in the global economy. And that's what this bill, the America Competes Act, will help us do. In San Diego, we're home to research centers that are world-renowned, groundbreaking tech companies. We recognize the immense importance of fostering talent and bolstering the innovative work taking place in San Diego and across the country. Our nation is lucky to have some of the best and brightest minds in the United States, in the world, which is why many of the most important innovations come from American universities, businesses, and federal research institutions. This bill, the America Competes Act, will support these transformative organizations by providing significant research and development funding to ensure that America continues to lead in the creation and commercialization of next-generation technologies. It's absolutely critical also that this funding is distributed in an equitable way. So the bill will support scientific research at HBCUs, Hispanic-serving institutions, and tribal colleges and universities so that everyone has the chance to participate in finding the breakthroughs of the future. In addition to the new federal R&D funding for the NSF, the DOE, and other agencies to promote basic and applied sciences, the bill also includes crucial measures to grow our STEM workforce. We'll properly cultivate the next generation of science and technology luminaries and do more to retain top talent that comes to our country from overseas to study at our world-class universities and institutions. So we'll continue to be the center of brain power in a brain-powered economy. The America Competes Act includes an amendment that I offered with Representative Kathy Manning, a New Dem from North Carolina, to ensure that graduates with advanced degrees in STEM who work in critical industries also get exemptions from numerical visa limitations in addition to doctoral STEM students, so master's degrees in addition to doctoral students. This will help the United States keep students on our shores after they've graduated in scientific cutting-edge fields. Americans never shy away from a challenge. We thrive in discovering and creating the future. New Dems believe that the America Competes Act will get the job done, will help catapult our workforce forward and secure the long-term prosperity and standing of the United States. So I'm enthusiastic about being here today. Happy to get this moving to a resolution in the Senate. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Vice Chair, Representative Ami Bera.
Great, thanks, Scott. So it's always tough being the last speaker because everyone said everything that needs to be said, but it really lays the foundation for one of the core values of the New Democrat Coalition, which is strengthening America's global leadership. Think about it. We've done this before. If you think about what we did in the post-World War II world, when we invested in research and technology, when we created the best university and research universities the world has ever seen, when we went out and rebuilt Europe, rebuilt Japan, created a well-developed economy in South Korea, we created stable democracies as well. And that's what this is about. This is about, if we're competing with the rest of the world, the best way to do that is invest in ourselves. That's how we compete with China. And that is what this is about. It's about creating supply chain resiliency. We've seen what's happened with the pandemic. When we think about inflation and those families that are struggling to buy that new car or going to the grocery store. Well, that's all supply chains that are being disrupted. Let's invest in ourselves. As chair of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, I've had a chance to talk to Taiwanese companies, Samsung Semiconductors in South Korea. They're ready to come to the United States and invest and build semiconductors here. That's why there's an urgency in getting this passed. The way we combat inflation, the way we start putting people back to work, the way we start to win the 21st century and create a rules-based order of movement of goods and services and compete with China is investing in ourselves. So let's get this done. Let's get this through the Senate and to the president's desk, and let's get it signed. And that's what the New Democratic Coalition is all about: growth and innovation and investment in the best of who we are as Americans. Thanks. Let me now turn it over to Susan Delbene.
Thanks, everyone. I want to open it up for questions. So just we're a small group, so just raise your hand and also say where you're from, so everyone's aware. And go ahead. Well, clearly, we'll have a conference to make sure that we come to agreement between the House and the Senate on the differences between the two bills. On 301, as you likely know, Congressman Kind led a letter on 301 and exclusion process. I supported that as well. So that will continue to be part of the conversation as we work between issues between the House and the Senate and come up with a final bill, and I expect that to be part of the conversation and conference.
Joe Clark with the Washington Times. Do you have any idea of the timeline for the conference? Have you gotten any assurance that we're going to start this as soon as possible? And what are the biggest challenges that you see in coming to a final agreement?
I don't have specifics, and I don't know if anyone here does on exactly the kind of how the conference will come together, specifically dates. I think part of what we're saying here today is we need to move rapidly. We want to see that happen as soon as possible, so we have a final bill that gets to the president's desk. Because in the end, we don't help our constituents, our communities get started on a lot of the work, whether it's CHIPS, as Congressman Stevens was bringing up, or many of the other issues we talk about, recompete, that Congressman Kilmer did, until we get those bills signed. So that's why we have a great sense of urgency about this, and we'll keep pushing the process.
Quick follow-up, I appreciate it. Republicans have been somewhat critical of the process in the House. They've noted that they didn't have as much input in the final bill as they would have appreciated. They noted that some of the legislation was kind of rushed through committee. Do you have any response to that?
I think that Republicans have been clear on the House side that they don't want to engage. Even before we had completed the bill, folks were telling folks not to support a final bill. So we need folks to come to the table and want to support a bipartisan process. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that on the House side. And if anyone else wants to add anything, just let me know.
I'll just say, when we marked up the Eagle Act in the Foreign Affairs Committee, that was like a mammoth 2-day markup that went on forever. We negotiated in good faith in the Eagle Act, but we want to talk about climate change. We think investing in those technologies and thinking about it, and at the end of the day, we weren't able to come up with a bipartisan bill, although we did make every good faith effort, and it was a long negotiation.
Yeah, I just add that many parts of the bill, many of the pieces included are bipartisan. So there was a lot of the pieces and even places that went through the Senate are very bipartisan. It's unfortunate that as we come to the end of the process that Republicans didn't want to engage, but if you look through the legislation and the process in the Senate as well, and their similar piece of legislation, many parts have been bipartisan going into it. Did you? Oh, go ahead.
Frustration that it's taken the House 8 months to come up with their own version, and now you're going to conference committee, and that could take a couple more months, and this is so urgent as you're saying from there right now?
I think we want to get it done as soon as possible, and we have a sense of urgency, so we're going to continue to push to get it done as soon as possible.
Yeah, Kyle Steer with NBC News. Have any of you reached out to your Republican colleagues to try to get their support for this? And what message do you think it sends that Republican leadership is actively whipping against this?
I kind of answered a little bit, but if anyone else wants to.
Oh, let's cut to the chase. It's incredibly disappointing. You know, you talk about the time frame here on the House Science Committee. Many components of this bill went straight through my subcommittee on research and technology and were passed overwhelmingly in a bipartisan way, right? That's the NSF for the future. That's the NIST provisions. That's the DOE legislation in here. And frankly, even CHIPS, which passed an NDAA on authorization and then appropriations, was endorsed by a handful of Democrats and Republicans in this body. And it reminds me of the infrastructure bill. You know, here you had a Senate move forward a piece of legislation. We all know the negotiation process takes its time. These bills are not exactly simpatico right now, but we will get into a conference. I'm very enthusiastic about what's in the House provisions, particularly the process that we undertook to get the doubling of U.S. scientific research funding done. Brilliant effort that was bipartisan. And then when you're at the finish line, they don't want to give credit. And if you listen to the House debate, it is an attack on the president. It's an attack on the agenda. And we're here saying we're doing the innovation piece. We are doing the competition piece. We are doing the accountability piece. Dr. Bera's spot on. This is how we win, by investing in the American people and investing in our economy and things like quantum, the advanced manufacturing supply chain, and on. So, yeah, we're going to take this vote today. We're going to be proud of what we have done, and it's going to be yet again an example of Democrats delivering for the people.
Any other questions? No, well, thank you all for coming. We're going to continue pushing. We'll go up here in a little bit and vote on the American Peace Act. Thank you. Have a good day.